All right. Welcome, Sam Grisman, to Drumroll's podcast. This is your first time around the place, so What are you thinking so far?
I'm totally impressed with what these guys have done here. It's awesome.
Cool.
It feels really good in here.
So for folks who aren't familiar with your musical prowess, give us a little bit of background about where your roots lay and how you've gotten to where you are now.
Well, I've been playing the bass since I was about 4 years old. I grew up in Mill Valley, California, in an incredibly rich musical environment. My father's a mandolinist named David Grisman, who has been making music since the early 60s and writing original new acoustic compositions that fuse a whole litany of genres and styles. And he has a lot of legendary musical friends and had a recording studio in our house when I was growing up and had a whole slew of legendary friends coming by to play music and record and work on music. And one of those friends was Jerry Garcia. And he and Jerry spent a lot of time working on traditional American music and their own stuff and really whatever they felt like working on in our house in the 90s. And so those are some of my earliest musical memories. And that sort of informs what we do in Sam Grisman Project.
Cool. So you mentioned Sam Grisman Project, but before we move on to that, you have been an artist for most of your lifetime. So tell us a little bit about your independent music exploration.
Yeah, I mean, I've always just wanted to play the bass in a really good band full of people I enjoy spending time with. So I've been doing some form of that for my entire adult life. I've been sort of primarily an upright bass player and a sideman. So I've worked with lots of heroes and peers from our dear friend Sarah DeVito, who has won probably 7 or 8 Grammys by now.
Killer.
We started playing music together when we were both teenagers. Played with her for some years and was in a band called The Deadly Gentlemen with some of my closest friends, including Dominic Leslie and Mike Barnett and Stash Weisslouch. Did that for several years. Played with the great Leanne Womack for about 5 years, who's one of my favorite country singers. And that was once I had already moved to Nashville. I was also playing with the great Brian Sutton, who's one of my favorite flat-picking guitarists on the planet, in the Brian Sutton Band for some years. And all the while was sort of playing in whichever project my dad would have me in. So for some years that was a trio with him and Jim Hurst, who's a guitar player from Ohio. Tremendous, versatile fingerstyle and flat picker. That was called the Folk Jazz Trio. And I guess when I was maybe 13 or 14, he resurrected the David Grisman Bluegrass Experience. And so I was traveling and touring with that band throughout middle school and high school. After the Folk Jazz Trio, my dad connected with a fellow Washingtonian named Danny Barnes, who is also one of my absolute heroes. And he's an incredible banjo player, songwriter, singer, guitar player, plays really everything. And that has morphed into a new trio called the Dog Trio. And that's sort of been active since maybe 2016 or 17, somewhere in there. But all the while been, playing with friends and heroes, from Tim O'Brien to Billy Strings to, I don't know, tons of folks. Yeah.
Very nice. That must be very redeeming to have gone through this whole growing up period where you're incrementally getting more involved with these heroes of yours, like you've mentioned, and now you have become the person who a well-loved project is named for.
Wow. I don't know if it's named for me.
Named after.
But, well,
You're the namesake, certainly. Your name is the name of the band.
In the truest sense of the word, it is my project.
Yeah.
I'm the one who has to figure out all of the logistics and, put the gig together.
Yeah.
But it's more of a democratic affair than the name lets on.
Yeah, I talked to your bandmate Rick Robertson recently, and he said the same exact thing, that it's kind of got your name on it, but everyone is really involved with decision making, and that you guys work together.
Yeah, I really wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, I'm trying to create something that's sustainable and community oriented and that really enriches everybody's lives, and these are the people I care the most about, like the people in my band and our community. And we want everybody to be on the same page creatively and with life things. And so
Right.
we're just a family unit trying to make it out here.
So, as a family unit trying to make it, for people unfamiliar with Sam Grisman Project, what is it that you guys are setting out to do?
Well, we're sort of honoring, part of it is definitely honoring this catalog of music that my dad and Jerry dove into together. But it's really about the spirit of that, which is great friends working on music that they really care about, that really matters to them. And then we're privileged to get to perform that material for people who also really care deeply about it. So it's sort of this community appreciation that happens. And so what we're setting out to do is just deliver these songs well, with integrity, and we're trying to sound like ourselves. And
Absolutely.
we're trying to improve, because you're never done in your musical journey. Everybody has lots of learning to do, and the most mastery you can hope to achieve is maybe knowing 1/100th of the entire musical language.
Yeah. the lifelong challenge of a musician.
Yeah, it's completely humbling,
I'm sure. And you mentioned that your catalog is this Jerry Garcia, David Grisman tribute, at least in name. Your tour is named after that. Though you have a very distinct sound, and you play a lot of other music during your shows. So how did you separate yourself and approach being able to honor this music, like you mentioned, in the way that you're interested in, while also having a very distinctive sound and atmosphere?
It's interesting. I think nobody's trying to sound any particular way, which is a crucial component to that. But I grew up around my dad and Jerry, and I feel like those guys were pretty fierce individualists, and they sounded like themselves. You can recognize either one of them within a few notes, tonally and just identifying the vocabulary that they're using. And I hired the guys in this band because I love the way that they sound. And we're developing a sound that is unique because everybody sounds like themselves, and then together there's a cohesive, equation there. It just comes down to really caring enough about this music and knowing it well enough to do it our own way, because it would be kind of a disservice to the legacy of my dad and Jerry to try to sound exactly like them. They already did that, and that some of those recordings are they can't be equaled or surpassed, and that's music that's really near and dear to all of us. So when we play Ripple or Friend of the Devil, we're not trying to sound like my dad and Jerry. We're not trying to sound like the Grateful Dead. We're trying to sound like a group of friends who love Ripple and Friend of the Devil.
Cool. And you mentioned that you are all like a group of friends and that you loved each of their sound, and that's how you kind of connected. How did you find these guys?
That's a great question. Well, Rick and I have been really good friends since we were 14, and we met each other at a mandolin camp in Santa Cruz, California called the Mandolin Symposium. I don't know if Rick touched on that.
You did touch on that.
Sometimes you actually meet at band camp.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just sort of hit it off. He wasn't trying to connect with me on the level of like, your dad's my hero. he just saw another Jewish-looking kid who was 14 and just struck up a conversation. He goes, "Hey man, did you get bar mitzvahed last year?" And that was literally how we connected in the cafeteria of the Mandolin Symposium.
Holy cow!
But, you know, he has always been writing great songs and delivering them, singing other people's songs. Even in that first Mandolin Symposium, or 2014-15, when we were teenagers, he had a willingness to like play guitar, sing, do all these things that all of these other wunderkind mandolin players weren't really focused on doing, because everybody was focused on developing their technique, you know, and learning fiddle tunes and instrumental music, and we all love that kind of music as well. But I think Rick was my first close musical friend who sort of showed me the power of songs, you know, because I grew up in a primarily instrumental environment.
Okay.
My dad does sing some, and, you know, I mentioned the bluegrass experience. He hired some great singers, and we played and sang bluegrass songs, but he doesn't consider himself a great singer. I don't really consider myself a great singer, but I love to sing, and I love songs, and I love how my friends in this band sing, and I think we sing well together. And these, you know, when you sing around guys who are better singers than you, they start to raise your level a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other two members of your band, Chris English and Aaron Lip, are from this area.
Yeah, and that's sort of why we're here. And they came into my path through knowing Rick.
Okay.
Rick and I started playing music together when we were 14 or 15, but then when we were about 18 or 19, Rick had a band called Eric Robertson and the Boston Boys. And I was in that band for several years, and that band morphed into a band called the Rigs. And that was when we were about 20, 21. And he started hiring Aaron, who at the time was playing in Giant Panda Gorilla Dub Squad, which is a band that's based out here.
One of my favorites when I
featuring the great Matt O'Brien.
Yeah, exactly.
Who we'll have here this weekend with us at the Drumroll.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Aaron and Rick started playing together in their early 20s, and that's about 15 years ago now. And so they've been developing that chemistry for a long time. Also, Aaron grew up in this part of the world in Naples, and Chris English is from Rochester, and he's an absolute fixture of the Rochester music scene. And so Aaron and Chris had been playing together for years. And so they had their own chemistry. Aaron and Rick had their own chemistry. And then Rick started playing some gigs with Chris, and they started to develop their own chemistry. And I started to hear about Chris English, and I knew all about Aaron and what he and Rick sound like together. And it just felt like pieces were falling into place. And we had a gig in the summer of 2022 in Vermont at the Green Mountain Bluegrass Festival, and we kind of got together ahead of that to rehearse, but also to record some things. We made the Temple Cabin Sessions EP, and yeah, it just really fell into place and sort of formed a nucleus of a band. And we played this show, and about a week later, I got a call from my dad's old booking agent. My dad's kind of like not really retired, but not traveling out of Washington very much. And so he hadn't booked a gig for my dad in 2 or 3 years, and a friend of his was at the festival and told him, "Hey man, I just saw Sam Grisman and his friends pay tribute to this catalog of Garcia Grisman stuff. I have no idea if he wants to tour this, but if he does, the landscape could maybe use it." And Barron called with a lot of enthusiasm and told me that, he could put us to work. And that was sort of the goal. I want people to hear my friends and how they deliver these songs, and also, the songs that they bring to the table. So there's room within what we do for any kind of material, really, including a lot of original Rick Robertson songs, Aaron Lip songs, and Chris English songs. This weekend at the Riviera, we'll have some Max Flensburg songs.
Cool.
Some Bob Dylan, some Tom Waits, some John Hartford, some John Prine, some Randy Newman.
Oh yeah, the works.
Some Bob Dylan.
Great.
And lots of Jerry Garcia and Robert Hunter.
You mentioned Jerry Garcia and Robert Hunter. I would be remiss to not mention this Grateful Dead tangential connection that you have. Now, I went to a couple of your shows last time you were in Geneseo in the spring, and it had some really Grateful Dead characteristics to the audience. There were people outside, like, holding up a one, hoping for a ticket. There was barefootedness. So were you surprised by that when you guys started out at all? Yeah.
No, I mean, those are my people. You know,
absolutely.
those are the folks who've been supporting my family my entire life. And, you know, care so deeply about that community of folks. And I was hoping that they would dig what we were putting down. And I'm truly humbled by the response in the short span of time. It seems like the people who have found out about us really like us. And
they love you.
We're really grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We love them too.
It's been a huge year for you guys. Obviously, starting out in this early 2022, kind of as this idea, and then in 2023, releasing Temple Cabin Sessions, going on tour, and now doing like a brief Geneseo residency type situation. What has that growth and intensity been like?
It's been a lot of work for myself and my partner Rachel, and for Rick and Aaron and Hollywood and Ed and May. We've had a great year. We've all learned so much, and we're sort of growing together. We're still in that phase where we're trying to let people know we exist. So as we keep going out into different corners of the landscape and more people have an awareness of what we're doing and who we are, then little pockets of the country start to become more fertile for us. And there's a little bit of like growth just in terms of, expanding the community and being able to reach more people, get more ears on what we're doing.
What parts of the country have you been able to spend a lot of time in and engage with since you've kind of been exploring?
Yeah. Well, I kind of made it a point to try to get most everywhere we could this year. So, we spent a ton of time out here in the Finger Lakes region and sort of in the Northeast in general. I think we had maybe 4 or 5 separate little runs of dates in the Finger Lakes. So definitely here. This is our second multiple night run at the Riviera, which is an adorable little theater here in Geneseo. And we're stoked to open up Drumroll, which would be another option for folks to come and play here in Geneseo, which is much needed. And we've done a similar thing. Rick and I sort of incubated the project in the Bay Area at a little bar called the Paper Mill Creek Saloon in Forest Knolls, California, which is a legendary, beautiful part of the world. It's very near and dear to me. And so on our first tour in January 2023, we toured up and through the Bay Area, and we've gone back 2 other times. We played 2 shows at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco with our friends Midnight North. And we played right after those Dead and Company shows, the last 2 shows. Mm-hmm. And that was huge for us because those shows, they both sold out. And I feel like we played to, 750 people each night from all across the country who, the unifying factor was that they were passionate about the music of the Grateful Dead. So in terms of getting in front of people who we would really like to know, or like to let know that we exist, that was a great group of folks to get in front of. And we've gone out to the West Coast a couple of times since then. We just played up in the Pacific Northwest for the second time in Portland and Seattle, and we love going out there. And we'll definitely keep going back. We've also gone to Colorado twice, and we're gearing up to head back for a 3rd time. Colorado's a really great place for us. We've been through the Midwest twice now, been through the Southeast twice. Some really great places for us down there in the Carolinas. Chicago's is a really cool place. We've only played in Evanston once, but we had a great time. We're going to head back to Chicago in April. Yeah, I mean, we continue to till the soil here in the Finger Lakes, and we're heading back to Southern California for the second time in February, and headed back to Arizona for the second time. I mean, there aren't very many places we haven't been at this point, but we promise we'll get there.
Yeah, you seem like you've been covering some serious ground, and with all of that action that's been going on, I'm sure there's been some downtime and community building. What have some of the highlights of this year as a whole been? Between touring, experiencing this development of a new culture, and all of it. That was pretty broad.
Yeah. Wow, it's a tough question to answer.
We can move on to a different one.
No, I mean,
okay.
Can you ask the question again?
Sure.
Yeah.
What have some of the highlights of the past year been? It seems like it's been busy. There's plenty to choose from.
Yeah. Well, I can't necessarily pick 5 highlights or anything, but just, experiencing the growth of the band musically and personally, and just seeing so many familiar faces come and see the band and really show genuine love and passion for what we're doing, and reciprocate what we're putting out has been really, really a blessing and super humbling. It's nice to get to play music with these guys, and it's nice to build a business with your friends. We're all learning so much about it, and we're mostly just striving to be happy and to make good music.
Cool. Seems like you've been able to make it happen.
We're very, very, very grateful.
And what can people look forward to in the next phase of Sam Grisman Project?
Well, you can look forward to an ever-evolving catalog of great material that the 4 of us and our friends might be inspired to play. And also, you can look forward to seeing it open up in terms of the cast of characters. We have so many great friends who love playing this music, and we'll have friends weave in and out of our situation throughout 2024 and into the future. Max Flansburgh's a really great example of one who lives up here in the Finger Lakes, and we'll have the great Nat Smith playing some cello with us, and the great Dominic Leslie playing some mandolin, the great Alex Hargraves playing some fiddle. We might have the great John Mylander out playing some fiddle. We'll have the great Roy Williams playing some guitar. It's just fun to hear different interpretations of this music, and certain people have an affinity for certain corners of this catalog, and we'll really bring fresh, exciting, compelling things to the table for us and for the community of SGP fans.
Cool.
Yeah.
And before we close out our chat from today,
yeah,
do you have any messages you would like to share with the people?
Just be kind to each other, and good things will happen. That's what we're trying to do. Sometimes we fall a little short. Hopefully we can all continue to grow together and work towards something positive that really emphasizes the music and what it's about. And we're constantly learning from the music and from each other, and there's just a lot of wisdom in the musical path.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been Sam Grisman. I'm Sarah DeVito, coming at you from Drumroll. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah.